Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to a very special, very cool show tonight. We have got two very special guests, all right, in this kind of like 80s discussion of the live scene in many parts here in the United States, what it was like to go to the clubs, go to the venues and the arenas, but more importantly, what was it like to play a lot of these places? We've got Jim Bacchi from Hittman, originated out of New York, right? And then we got Kurdt Vanderhoof from metalchurch, originated out of Seattle. What's up, guys?
How's it
Just
going?
hanging out, buddy.
Very cool. Very cool. So, before we started taping, we got this whole conversation going, and they were both telling me stories about, back in the day. And I said, all right, let's start taping because there's too much gold here we're missing. So again, this is meant to be more of a kind of like trip down memory lane. So I could have each one of you guys kind of talk a little bit about when your band started. What was it like to go out there? Who were some of the bands you played with? Who were some of the bands you saw? That whole sort of thing. Jim, why don't you get us started? You're originally from New York. You're now out in the Los Angeles area, but I think you and I both kind of probably saw a lot of the same bands and kind of attended a lot of the same venues back in the 80s. So why don't I have you kick off this conversation?
Okay, so for me, I started going to shows really young. And of course, it was the big arena shows, the first one being Kiss. I think we can all share the common. I saw Kiss in 77, twice in 77, beginning and the end. And then once I got into Kiss, I discovered Rush, who I saw many times, like 12, 13 times between 78 and 82. Like I saw them every time. They were my favorite band. And then, everybody from Frank Marino, Mahogany Rush, and I saw Rainbow with Ronnie James Dio, which we talked about, which was that, and the Rush Hemispheres at the Palladium were probably my two best concert experiences ever. And just to see, because Ronnie was in Rainbow for such a short period of time that not many people got to see them. So it was Rainbow and Long Live Rock and Roll Tour, and AC/DC was the opener. Of course, they had Bon Scott. So 1,500 seater called the Calderon Concert Hall in Hempstead, who I saw lots of shows there. It's Pat Travers and on and on. And on.
Pat Travers.
Yeah, the classic lineup I saw there.
The Cowling Aldridge Band.
What a band that was, huh?
And I had like second row. It's a 1,500 seat, just straight seats all the way up, no mezzanine. And I saw that happen 5 feet away. So
that's the only band I ever saw Rush give them a run for their money.
I bet.
Rush. It was like, they weren't, but it was like, wow, that was pretty
Together you saw them.
Yeah. Travers opened for Rush. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Just think about that. All right. So you got the three guys in Rush, and then you got Pat Thrall, Pat Travers, Mars Cowling, and I'm assuming Tommy Aldridge, right?
It was the Cowling Aldridge Band. Yeah.
Look at the musicianship on those seven guys right there.
It was insane.
Yeah.
See that?
It's like God came down and went, and there's a Mellotron choir chord right there, and then here's the best of the best, kids,
Yeah.
Now go home and do your homework.
Yeah, go learn this. So I saw oh my God, the shows I saw the following year when I saw Rainbow was when Graham Bonnet joined, and it was Rainbow and Scorpions, and Scorpions was on the Love Drive tour. Right?
Nice.
So again, I was like, I snuck up to the second row. We got kicked out at the end of Scorpions, back to our seats in the back. But I think I went and looked up. Scorpions, I think, had maybe played 10 or 20 shows in the United States ever. And like when they came on stage, they would look visibly afraid. Like they were standing in one place. When you saw Scorpions, like later, they were put on a real crazy, they were all over the place. But they were just kind of standing there marching in place, like Rudolph with his blue spandex and the white shoes. And, I saw that, and like I was just newly into Scorpions. So like Scorpions and Rainbow together, like again.
Who was playing second guitar on that tour? Because Shaker played on the record.
It was Matthias.
It was Matthias in that. Okay, great. Okay, cool.
Oh my God. And then by the end of the set, they had finally kind of gotten out of their shell and they started to really, go crazy. But at the beginning, it looked like, wow, they've never actually been here. They looked afraid. It was weird. And that is the only time I saw them until about 2010 or something. I never saw them that, but shows like that is what I started out going, seeing late 70s, Kiss, Rush many times, in small venues, not, the first time I saw them, they were an opener for Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah.
And that
What
was
an
like,
awful show. Yeah.
yeah, Blue Oyster Cult had the lasers and, it was amazing. And so those are the shows I started out seeing, Styx and Angel,
Angel.
yeah, Angel, yes, Angel.
Love it.
Them, and UFO a bunch of times, and never with Michael Schenker though. Back in the day, I missed.
Yeah,
Like I
I did too.
Night, like the one show that I'm so bummed that I missed. I was probably too young to really know about it. It was Rush, UFO, and Cheap Trick at the Palladium. Like we're talking 77, so Lights Out, Farewell of the Kings, and probably Heaven Tonight.
yeah.
Those without talk about the three most amazing bands in their prime. So
Records that I still play regularly.
to this day,
Do we all, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So so that's what and when I got old enough to go to clubs, I would sneak into clubs when I was 17, see Twisted Sister, who was still a club band, and Zebra was still a club band.
I love it. Yeah.
And then, I know that when the new wave of British heavy metal happened, we started getting Kerrang! Magazine, and then those bands started playing, and I was old enough to go to clubs. So now we're going, Manowar. I mean, not new wave of British heavy metal, but like the first Manowar, after the first Manowar album, I saw them. Then New York, everybody came through New York and played at Lemoore. So
God.
I want to see Manowar and like getting my window smashed because everyone did at Lemoore. If you went to Lemoore, Brooklyn, you got your window smashed and your car radio stolen. And, it was February, so I'm driving home and it's 10
I escaped that. That never happened to me, but
you're really lucky.
I was lucky.
It was a rite of passage.
It was a rite of passage. I've even seen like Scott Ian talk about that. Like, yeah, you go to Lemoore and you just know you're getting your car stereo stolen. And sure enough, so I saw a lot of stuff there, Manowar, except, Wasp, Armored Saint, Metallica, that tour, stuff like that. Like I saw the first, when Metallica did those shows with Venom, when Kirk joined the band, those first shows with Kirk, like I was at one of those shows. It was like, nice. I went to see Venom, who I always thought were really funny and horrible, but my friends loved them. So I'm like, I got to go see this, Yeah, I was not, I thought they were funny. Metallica opened up and I never heard them. And, so stuff like that. And that was a regular thing for me. Every week we'd be going to Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, New Jersey, wherever we could to see these club shows. And for me, it's kind of the equivalent of when you talk to an older guy, says like, yeah, I saw Jimi Hendrix at the Fillmore West, that you're at the beginning of something. And that's why I think this is it was so cool to like, it was our music. It was our new music. You know what I mean? So it was very exciting to be at because, it wasn't on the radio. They didn't even play Rush on the radio in 1978. So
they still don't. Well, they do on FM occasionally, but they had to.
Like 3 or 4 songs. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. It's Closer to the Heart. And then something from
Tom Sawyer,
Tom Sawyer, and Moving Pictures.
Spirit of Radio. That's it. Done.
Yeah, that's all you get.
Back then, they didn't play them at all. So it was, but it was interesting to see after the new wave of British heavy metal. And of course, Iron Maiden opened up for Judas Priest with Paul Di'Anno. Saw that.
Cool.
Randy Rhoads with Ozzy, a couple of shows with that, with Motorhead open.
Motorhead, I saw that out in Santa Cruz. I remember that.
So amazing, right? I mean,
just endless amounts of stuff. Like every weekend, it was something. Yeah. Whether it was in the 70s when we were kids going, or later in the 80s when we were doing gigs and going to shows.
Right.
So before we get into you guys talking about gigs and opening and playing for some of these bands, Kurt, how about some of your like early memories of bands you went to see before Metal Church?
Oh my God. Okay. First first concert was, first real concert was Grand Funk on the Shining On tour. Yeah, it was like, I mean, it was great, but the only problem was they came out in all the flowery, glittery stuff. And I was like,
that was the mid '70s for them, but still, man.
yeah, I mean, it was still great. They opened with foot stomping music, and just was like,
I love foot stomping.
I know, it was just, that was awesome.
I didn't get to see them. I'm so bummed.
And then, then seeing Zeppelin, seeing that, but the shows that really did a number on my head was it was like the number. I mean, well, we were talking about it before we started taping, was going to the Paramount Theater in Seattle. It was Kiss Dressed to Kill tour, or no, Kiss Hotter Than Hell tour. What early Kiss when Rush was the opener, and the band I was in Tacoma was all we played was Kiss and Rush, but we always played our Rush songs instrumental because nobody could sing them. So. And we played, and then we'd play, what other stuff with that. I just remember that. And then when that tour happened, the whole band went, we had to walk around in formation, and we went and we made our Kiss shirts. We found black t-shirts, and we took little sequins and made Kiss shirts, made it look like the first album cover. Guys would think, do you work for them? Stuff like that. Like,
but you know how cool that is, because in the tradition of that's what Kiss did originally, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember we were like 4 days before we were figuring out how to do it. We took the Kiss album, the first album cover off the back, and stenciled all the dots, to do the thing. And then we put it on there and made little dots with paint to put it in, and then sewed the sequins on. I mean, it's like you had to do it yourself, and it was just a whole thing, So anyway, so we were excited to see that. We knew Rush, and we loved both bands. But the thing that just killed me, I was like fourth row. It was a theater, and the lights came down. And all of a sudden you hear like, the lights come down, everyone's, yeah, and all of a sudden you hear just off in the distance, and then it goes up, and oh yeah, and the lights came on. It was just like, poof, and then they play that song, and you're just like, I'm 14 years old, just like, okay, it's like, I'm never going to be the same.
Mind blown.
Exactly, boom, yeah, it's like, well, I know what I'm doing the rest of my life, And it was just one of those shows, and then Kiss came out, and they were still Kiss, and they were still our band. Nobody knew who they were, along with Rush. But it was just those. And the second show was when Kansas opened for Queen at the Paramount Theater.
Oh, wow.
Song for America tour, Sheer Heart Attack tour. And it was like, so here the light comes down, and okay, here's the opening act coming on. We didn't know who they were. So these big fat hippies in overalls come out, right? So we're like, oh. So it's like, oh no, it's going to be a blues band. Oh, great. And then, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And then it just went on from there. It was like, wow. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. They said, thank you, good night. And there was like this 10 or 15 seconds, just dead silence. And we all looked, I was like, what just happened? And then the place just erupted.
Is it okay to applaud this? Because we love it, right?
Yeah. Well, we were just blown away because we didn't know what the heck was going on. We'd never seen anything like that. Open up a Song for America, which is one of the best songs ever written. I mean, prog or not. I mean, it's just like amazing. And then and it was the Song for America tour. So they played about 4 or 5 of those songs, and it was just amazing. And then we just didn't know. I remember we were just all blown away. We didn't know what to do. And then it was like, the place just erupted. Then Queen came out and, completely, laid waste to the theater, on that tour when they were, because they were still in the robes and the long hair and just the whole, now I'm here, now I'm, it just was like amazing. So those shows when you're 14, 15 years old, that's like, I go, man, does that ever happen to kids anymore? Anything that intense? I mean, I can't imagine that happens at a Jay-Z concert or something.
No.
I mean,
and what's really cool about that story is like, from that day, you fast forward 30 some odd years, and all of a sudden the seed is planted in the mind of Kurdt Vanderhoof. It's like, you know what? I'm going to put together this band called Presto Ballet.
Still to this day, I base that whole thing on that.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. You are right on spot, hit the nail on the head with that. That's exactly it. Yeah. It's just like, okay, I have to do my version of that. I have to try, because it was just so powerful, it was just, and you're just overwhelmed with musicality and just talent and actual skill, because you couldn't cheat. You couldn't, cut and paste. You couldn't, it was all, you had to play it, and it was like, that element is gone, and everybody sound. That's another thing about records back in that day, and even the '80s. Everybody sounded different.
Yeah.
Their sonically, their production was different. The guitar sounds were different. You could identify every different band. Zeppelin sounded way different than Sabbath. Sabbath sounded different than Deep Purple. Deep Purple sounded different than Thin Lizzy. Heap sounded different than Blood, and the list goes on and on and on and on to everything. Where now you can sometimes identify the band from the singer, you know.
Yeah.
And even bands I like, it's just the guitar sound, everything's perfect now, you know. And it's like all the records are perfect, and I'm like, well, that's cool and everything, but wow, everybody's got the same guitar in, you know. It's like.
It's a struggle as an artist because you want to sound as good as that, but we're all using the same plugins. We're all using the same gear. So it's kind of like, it's an internal
balancing
struggle.
act.
Yeah. Cause you want to like make it sound,
You want it to be competitive to stand
Right.
up. And then you also want to, how do I do it? Keep it competitive, but yet have its own identity. So it's tough, man. Yeah.
It's very tough. It's very tough. I'll agree with you there.
You guys bring up a good point. So the latest Hittman CD and the most recent thing from Metal Church, really good stuff. And I think both of your bands have somewhat harnessed that energy and that sound from the early days, brought it into the modern era. Whereas like you listen to it and you're like, yeah, you know what? That still sounds like Hittman. That still sounds like Metal Church, right? But you don't want, in a way, you almost don't want it to sound exactly like that because you got to progress a little bit, right?
Right.
But with all the modern techniques, it's like it's going to sound a little bit different anyway, right?
Exactly.
So it's got to be a challenge to you guys.
It's really tough. Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Well, personally for me, at about 1989 or 90, I kind of stopped listening to metal.
Mhm.
I just kind of was a decade of it just being super hardcore into metal, and the scene was changing. And you know, a band like Hittman, we were in that in between. We weren't thrash, we weren't. So it was
Yeah.
tough.
I mean, that's why you guys are perfect, because both of your bands are in the same spot and we're in the same spot. It's like, what are we? Are we classic metal, thrash, power metal? We're kind of like all that and not.
Yes, we're that.
Right. And it was for us, like after 1994, we stopped, and we only got back together to do stuff about a couple of years ago. And I'm a music composer for a living. I do music for TV and that kind of stuff. And I've had to do metal stuff over the years. But the only way I really know how to write metal is that old way. Like I didn't stay current with the way metal changed. I didn't start dropping tuning. Like we still play an A440 tuning, you know?
My brother.
And to me, that's almost the biggest difference with how you can tell a modern band from a newer band, because all the modern bands, you know, drop their tuning and it changes the sound. That's the only way, like me and the rest of the guys, like we haven't really been a band for so long. So when we got back together to start writing new material, I wanted to start really writing like more like late 70s, early 80s style. And our label, the label that we're on is No Remorse in Greece. And the audience that still knows or cares about us is mostly Germany, Greece. And they made it very clear to us, like we want that original first album Hittman sound, because our second album was very different. We went in off all these tangents. So like, okay, so the label we sent them a bunch of songs and they're like, okay, these 6 are good. The rest of these, let's not do these. So we ended up pulling 2 old songs. Yeah, right. So we took 2 old songs that we never recorded back in the day, and we recorded them, and they're like, these are good. So they really wanted the first Hittman album sound, and so that's what we tried to do. And it took a while for me to go back and find that 22-year-old version of myself and kind of replicate it. But I have that Hamer Flying V, which is the guitar I played. And when I play that guitar, that's what comes out.
It comes out, yeah.
That's the Hittman sound. So yeah, so that's kind of how we did it. I don't know what your journey was for it, but that was for me, you know. So
Yeah, it was the whole, yeah, well, for example, on the last studio album of Metal Church, which I mean, it was very well received, but there was a lot of people that like didn't like the guitar sound on it. And I'm like, well, that's the way guitars used to sound. Guitars were never so big and fat that there was no room for bass. Or
right.
the only time you ever heard bass is when it stopped. You know, it's like guitars aren't supposed to be that fat. There's supposed to be room for bass guitar. So that was completely intentional. And I still record on tape and then I hybrid it with the computer.
Oh.
But yeah, because for any number of retarded reasons. But it was just like it was just that. And I was like interesting because I wanted it to sound old school. Again, it was the attempt to try to balance the two, make the production as big and loud, but yet it was a way I tried to make it still keep that character and not, you know, and not have that. So some people got it, some people didn't, and there's always people that you don't. But that was exactly my attempt at it, you know. And I'll probably try it again, you know, maybe something else. But you know, it's but for me going through the '80s, you know, that was learning production. And going back, Metal Church took a break for a while and I tried some solo stuff and did some other things. But when it was time to go back to doing that, I was like, no, I'm not tuning down. To me, that's like, you do that for effect on a couple of things, maybe drop a D to play a song or two, you know, but to drop your whole guitar down, it's like, well, write something heavy. Don't make you, you know, if you tune down and just like, you're cheating. It's like, cause then it sounds, everything sounds heavy, you know, and it's like, you know, and it's like, you're, you know, and I'm like, just write something heavy, just try harder, you know. But then that's also on the other side of it is that's them developing their sound, which is more power to them. But yeah, I'm totally A40, you know, A440. It's just that's where it was, you know. And you know, it was all about trying to capture a vibe, and you know, it was about the energy. And that's like, I think why the first Metal Church album was so popular is we just went in the studio, we didn't know what we were doing, we just went in and played it live because that's what we thought you did, you know, and we just bashed it out, and we never been able to recapture that since, you know. But yeah, and technically, and to me, when I listen to it, technically, sonically, and all that, it doesn't sound very good, but it's the energy and stuff, because we were just a bunch of excited kids going into the studio to make a record, and that came out, and we just put that on tape. So that's like, okay, there's another balancing act there. Then how technical do you want to make it, as opposed to how much energy do you want to capture? Where's the fine line, and how do you keep it competitive today so people don't pop it in now and go, oh, I have to completely crank up my stereo now because the last record that I just listened to by some European death metal band, you know, is just so loud, you know, that you don't turn it down. You put your record in and it has like dynamic range, but then you crank it up and then they're not going to like it. So it's tough. It's tough to balance that. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel you on all
yeah,
of it.
I know. I can tell we're both like, yeah.
I'd rather have the dynamics, you know, personally.
You know, I personally would. I mean, hey, nobody sells records anymore anyway. At least I'll put a record out and go, I can stand behind that, you know, and just like, hey, I want a record that will have the dynamic. Right. And I guess I think that's also why I listen to vinyl most of the time now. So yeah, it keeps that. Yeah.
It's funny. I was doing a show the other day. I don't know if either of you guys caught it, but I started talking about Gods of Wrath off the first album.
Oh, really? Oh, cool.
And talking about what a genius display of like the whole, which you saw a lot in the 80s, but not always so successfully, that whole light and shade thing. And the topic of the show was like mellow songs from heavy bands. And like,
oh, I saw that. I didn't watch the show though, but yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I wanted to pick that song, but it's still a pretty fucking heavy song, right?
Yeah.
It's got those mellow parts that you really dig. And, you know, one of the examples was like Metallica's Fade to Black. And I think you guys did a fantastic job of doing something differently. You have the melodies and the hooks, the anthemic quality, the mellow sections. It's kind of pretty. And all of a sudden that voice comes in, those riffs come in, and it's like, and that's what metal was all about in that time period, right? It's like that balancing act, right? Between the heavy, the melody, you know, the light and the shade, that whole thing, you know?
Exactly. And one of the things that is really easily forgotten as we're talking about prog bands, like early metal was very, very influenced by prog rock. that in particular, the mellow, the longer songs, the ups and downs and changes and tempo changes and all that stuff, that was kind of gets lost now. And I miss that, because that was an element that we took. We couldn't play like the guys in Yes, but we could take that idea, because we loved that and looked up and like Rush and things like that, where the songs were bigger, more epic types of things, and bring moods and dynamics to try to be as musical as possible. Now it's just like, I'm sorry, but it's like a lot of the heavy stuff now I listen to, it just sounds like little 4-minute tantrums to me. There's no, just like, it's just like, what am I listening to? And it's like, I mean, I know they have their fans and that's great and that's their thing, but for me, I'm just like, man, I gotta have some melody and some dynamics and things like that, and I miss that so much.
Right. And they're all playing to a grid. Everything's on a grid. Everything's on a tempo grid.
Well, because that's how you can get your guitar track done, because you can cut and paste it.
I do that myself.
Hey, I'm guilty. I do it, but I don't do it on anything I put out for sale. I mean, I love the digital for writing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, it's I'm sure you weren't playing to a metronome on the first Metal Church record.
No, try to put a metronome to it. I tried that once, and like the metronome, and we're going like this all over the click track. We didn't even know that you put a click track in your headphones. We just, okay, count it off on the hi-hat. Now play it.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, but that song Metal Church, I mean, if you played that to a grid now, it just wouldn't have the same feel.
It'd be a snooze. Yeah, exactly.
That's about as good a riff as you get when they get that fast part.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Cool. Thank you. Well, and a lot of it too is missed now. And this has nothing to do with COVID, the lockdown BS, but it's the fact that now everything with digital, bands don't have to get in the same room anymore.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about that first record, is that we recorded it as a band. It's basically live in the studio, except we redid some vocals and added some lead guitar, and that's how you capture that. And it's like, I really, really would like to try that again with any project I'm working on. Just let's learn the songs, let's rehearse in a garage, learn the songs, then go record them as a band. And I think that's one of the things with the classic stuff that we grew up with. And I did this with, like, when I was making a cover song for somebody or something, and I was trying to put it on the click so I could learn how to play it. And I think it was a Bad Company song and a Boston song and a Triumph song. So I tried to put it on the click and get the tempo doing, and none of those songs would line up with the click track.
No.
Ever. And I just was like, oh wow, there's Simon Kirk doing this and pushing and pulling the band. It's like, the light bulb really went on. It's like, that's what's missing. And like you just said, it's the grid and the click track. I mean, stuff is so perfect now. I'll get a backache because it's just so perfect. It's like, and it's like, oh man, so how do you get around another balancing act? But
yeah.
Hey,
yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, Kurt brought up an interesting point before, talking about kind of like prog influencing like a lot of metal bands in that time period. So I want to touch on, so Jim, Hittman's debut came out at a time where you had bands like Fate's Warning and Queensryche and Crimson Glory all popping out, right? Were you guys influenced by that whole scene at all? And maybe this is a good segue to talk about, when Hittman's first album came out and, who you guys were playing with and admiring, and what the scene was kind of like when you actually hit the road with that first album.
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure. All of those, Crimson Glory, we were kind of around the same time. Queensryche, I mean, from the EP, right from the get, I love them, and that influence is obvious. We've constantly getting compared to Queensryche, good or bad. I love those first, 5 records or whatever. But yeah, I mean, our first gig was opening for Stryper in 1985. So, awesome. And I liked Stryper. They had great guitar tones. Oh, yeah. The Jesus thing, whatever. They were an amazing band. They had amazing vocals. They were super nice to us. Our first show was opening for them at Nassau Community College. Sold out, like 1,000 people.
Wow, that was your first show?
Yeah, that was our first show. It all went downhill.
Good job.
It was an amazing way to start. I mean, and they were super nice. Ozfox came out and, they listened to us and we were talking to them. We ended up playing again with them up in Connecticut But yeah, Pete, we played with Liege Lord, we played with Fate's Warning. And, it was so cool to go. I saw Fate's Warning like last year with Queensryche. It was so cool. I mean, Jim is the only remaining guy, but it was so cool. Like, yeah, like I remember like we played with them back in the beginning and they stuck to what they did.
Right.
Like they didn't stop. It was so cool. Just like, wow, man, this is like more than 30 years of Fate's Warning, right? And it was cool to know that, like, yeah, we played gigs with them in the beginning. So yeah, we played with them. We played with Saxon. We played with Killer Dwarfs. We, a lot of those with Liege Lord. We played with Armored Saint. And it was cool. It was cool to play with those bands, and to see that. Like we kind of got started in 85, late 85. So we were playing 86, 87. And at that time, thrash started coming in. So all of a sudden it's like, you're a metal band, but you're not really heavy enough anymore. So there was that whole evolution that happened. But yeah, we were fans of Queensryche and the Priest and Maiden. And those bands like Priest and Maiden were very kind of progressive for metal bands.
Absolutely.
Song like
Hallowed Be Thy Name. Hallowed Be Thy
Right.
Name. That's a prog epic piece of work right there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I was a fan of progressive rock and Rush and Yes and Genesis and that stuff. So I liked the progressive element that metal had early on, because people weren't just, even Metallica, the first Metallica record, before they became a little more formula, they had weird time changes, and those first couple records,
Absolutely.
had lots of progressive elements to them. And that was cool. I don't think you see that as much anymore.
No, or it's not executed quite right for whatever reason,
Yeah. But then there are great, amazing progressive metal bands that just do that, and they're incredible.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
But
exactly.
It was a part of the equation back then, because bands like Priest, like a song like Exciter, was a weird song. I mean, it was oddly progressive, So
exactly.
yeah, sorry, Pete, am I straying from the question? The progressive rock element, I think was apparent in especially those early Maiden records.
Yeah. Did you guys cross paths with Dream Theater at all? Because I know they were coming up right after you guys had already broke a bit. They were just starting to come up.
Yeah, we did. Mike is we're still friends. I hadn't seen him for a long time, but we've been talking a lot recently, doing some stuff together. I met Mike. I think the first time I hung out with Mike was at a Fate's Warning video shoot, I think, for whatever the video they did from Perfect Symmetry.
Oh yeah.
Joined the band. Yeah, he remembers, like, yeah, we hung out at that Fate's Warning video shoot. I'm like, that's right. And we crossed paths a lot. And we never played together though, which is odd. But we did. I'd always go to a show or a club and see him. So, I saw his, him and John Petrucci both married these women from this band called Mean Streak. I remember being at their gig and seeing all them there. This had to be when they met them, because Mean Streak were a new band. So yeah, we never played with Dream Theater, but we definitely hung out with them. I had John Petrucci over the house. He's like, let's jam. He came over the house, and I was like, man, I'll never do that again, because like he's so good. It was just like,
it's like, I know, I listened to that and I'm like, well,
I'm just gonna
I
put
guess it's over.
He was really young at the time, but like he was such a nice guy. Like,
And he's such a good guy. Yeah, he really
such
is.
a good guy, but like, my God, what a player. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was, we were around the same scene at the time. So
Yeah, we did the, in Seattle, it was kind of strange when we started. There wasn't, the punky thing was kind of going on a little bit. And that's kind of where Metal Church roots came from, because my roots came from first generation punk. And that's when I got into the new wave of British heavy metal, because the first band was a punk band, and we relocated to San Francisco from Seattle. And so I was really into that when we were playing around San Francisco. So we were doing gigs with Crime and the Avengers and all these Bay Area bands of that era. And then I started getting wind of the new wave of British heavy metal. And I'm like, wait, what's going on here? So something with the same energy and attitude, but musical skill. It's like, oh, okay, I'm in. So that's when I started developing, like, okay, I'm going to do this. And that's when the whole idea for Metal Church started. But when we actually started, we were first a cover band, playing all the cover, we were playing a bunch of cover tunes from that era, but we were playing high school dances because we were trying to get the final lineup. And then like the last couple of shows we did is after we found David Wayne, we were doing, it was so hilarious. I'll never forget as long as I live, playing high school dances in Aberdeen, Washington. You know, we're playing Saxon and Maiden, and a slow dance for us was War Pigs. You know? Watching the kids done like, oh man, we had so much fun, but we weren't doing it to entertain them. We were just trying to get our crap together, you know. So we were doing that and playing. We played Restless and Wild and all this stuff that nobody knew.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was just like, but you know, we were on a mission trying to do it. We had to get the right lineup to do it. So when we actually started doing our own stuff, then there really wasn't. I mean, we did our first show in Aberdeen at the DNR Theater, and it was our first show to practice because we had one track on the Northwest Metal Fest compilation album that was coming out, and we were with and then there was a big show the following week for all the people on that record to promote it, and it was at the Moore Theater. So we did one show, and then we did that show, and then we just started touring on our own, just around the country in the RV and stuff. But most of it a lot of the shows we played were just on our own, club dates and things like that. It's after we kind of got the first record out on our own, then we started. I'm trying to remember exactly, but there wasn't a whole lot of gigs in Seattle that we did. And then the thing started to split into the metal glam thing. You know, that started to split into that whole thing. So, you know, and then when you're a kid, that's the enemy. We hate them. And, you know, that whole kind of thing. You know, and you know, it's now I've learned like, well, that was pretty stupid because some of those bands were really pretty good. You know, and it's but it's a kid thing. And then but then going on the road, you know, first tour, you know, us and Anthrax, you know, and those tours, and then we did the Metallica thing, obviously, and then playing shows with Megadeth, and they were opening for us, and you know that because they were just starting out, and I mean just all of that. I mean there wasn't a lot of other places for us to play, so we were very lucky, and we kind of launched pretty quick after the first album came out, you know, and then was doing some local shows like with Wild Dogs from Portland, and God, who else did we play? We did a couple of shows with Slayer. They came up there, and you know, they crashed out in the apartment and stuff like that. So you know, we were all at the same level. You know, we were all just struggling and driving around in a van, you know, doing all that thing. So when you're immortal and indestructible, you know, that was, you know, it was really fun. But I mean, that's when it started to splinter. You know, it was just like right about then, like because the glam thing started to happen. You know, so.
Do you think, and you know, Kurdt, you and I have talked about this before, but do you think it hurt either one of your bands that it was kind of so hard because back then, you both know this, when it came to like heavier music, they like to put every band in a category, right? You know, glam metal or hair metal, like it was called back then, classic metal, thrash, you know, death metal, the extreme underground was just starting to happen at the time. Yeah. Progressive metal wasn't really a thing yet, but there were bands that were kind of doing that.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, neither one of your bands really fits, and we talked about this a few minutes ago, fits into any kind of bucket really, but kind of draws from a lot. Do you think in the long run, when looking back on it, that maybe that was kind of tough for you back then?
You know, to me, looking back, it was all metal when we were starting. It was just heavy metal, you know, right. whether it was, you know, us compared to Metallica or Anthrax, it was all the same thing because everybody got what everybody else was doing. I think that was later that it started to.
It changed very quickly, right?
Yeah. It's just like, okay, now this is this, this is this, and this is this, you know. But when we were starting, it was all just metal. You know, it wasn't even new metal. It was just metal. We're all metal, and everybody was doing that kind of thing. So, you know, I think later, it might have, but I don't think we could have done anything else. I don't think because like when Mike joined the band, and when Blessing in Disguise came out, we definitely went in a more hard rock vein. And I was just going to say, when you guys were talking earlier, by today's standards, we're a hard rock band, you know, by today's standards, and that's perfectly fine with me. That's okay. But you know, because everything just keeps getting heavier and heavier and more aggressive, you know. But it was to have it splinter like that, and then to everything break into factions, which it always does. You know, whatever kind of genre it is, it just because it gets popular, and then people start doing their own version of it. But you know, yeah, there was definitely the this is metal, and then this is, you know, glam. You know, this is Hollywood Sunset Strip stuff. So, you know.
Right. Yeah. And the word the word poser became a real problem. You know?
Yeah, like the elephant in the room. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
like Hittman, we all from Long Island and Queens, so we played Lemoore East. Lemoore East is where all the poser bands played, you know. But you know, Metallica played there, Queensryche played there, you know, the big bands that came through, but the scene there was more, you know, the girls more glam and that type of stuff. But that was local to us, you know. We played Brooklyn maybe one time. And by that time it was like, oh, they're that band that plays at Lemoore East. And it's like, yeah, but we're a metal band, you know. And Lemoore and Brooklyn was where all the heavy, and once we kind of came along after metalchurch did. So by the time we kind of got up and running, 86, you know, bands like, you know, Slayer and Metallica had gotten really big. And all of a sudden it's like, if you were metal, you had to be that. So for us, it was a problem because it was just like, we have a singer that sings, you know, I'm Michael Schenker influenced guitar player. So I'm very melodic and we like to have harmonies, and we actually,
oh no.
Yeah, God forbid, right? Yeah. But it was a problem. It what really was, and that's why our.
But it was. You're right. Yeah.
Well, it was just by the time we got our legs, it was all of a sudden it's like, if you know, if you're a metal band, you had to be really fast and really heavy, really fast and really heavy, and I like melodic music, so it did become a problem for us. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. I think it did for us to a point. But I don't think there was really any other way around it. I mean, I think it had to be, for us, it had to be that way because we didn't really want to be Metallica. We didn't want to be Anthrax. That was their thing. You know, our thing was drawing from this. I mean, for me, it was a lot of punk influence, but then mix in all the stuff I grew up with, you know, the Yes and the Genesis and the Kansas and the Rush, and throw all that into a pile. And it's like, okay, I want to do something, and I still go through that now. I want to do something that I like. You know, like, hey, okay, so it'll sell whatever it sells, or, you know, people in Germany will not think that we're good little Satans, you know, if we don't do this, you know. And I'm like, sorry, you know, that's just what it is, you know. And I'm, you know, because you got to, as you well know, you got to stand behind what you do. It's got to be honest, you know, because people, I mean, real music fans can smell that a mile away.
Oh yeah. You know, it's a shame he couldn't make the show tonight, but you know, Phil Sandoval was supposed to join us tonight from Armored Saint. Armored Saint totally fits into this conversation. As well.
Dude, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Phil, buddy.
And that's the band that really didn't get their due when they should have. You know?
Yeah, totally.
In the game, right? 83, 84, they put out March of the Saint. You know, great band,
way ahead of the curve.
Vocalists ever in metal, John Book. Right.
And the thing about them is they're such great guys too. Yeah.
I've only
good guys.
A little bit. We played last year. We played a festival in Athens, and they were on the Friday night, and we played the Saturday night. We were like co-headliner. Liege Lord was headliner, and Armored Saint headlined the Friday night. And I watched them. You know, I watched the show, and like they started. That song Win Hands Down, their last record, the title track was amazing. He opened up with that and went right into March of the Saint. And I welled up. I got like emotional. Like, it was so good. And the crowd was just singing every word. Like, I got back to the hotel later and I saw Joey Vera, and I got total fanboy. And I was like, oh my God, you're so amazing, but you suck because now the rest of us have to follow that. Right. And we never will. It's like, it was so good, and like no one had the crowd like that because they're so good live.
Yeah.
I just said, you know, you ruined it for the rest of us because now we have to go play tomorrow, and like nothing's going to touch that, and nothing did. You know, as great as everybody was, everyone sang our songs. It was like they just completely decimated the place.
Yep.
And you know, they hadn't been there in like 17 years or whatever, but like they're such a good live band. Still, it's the same original guys, except for Dave Pritchard who passed. But,
right. Yeah.
But yeah, that was a band that should not have gotten lost in the shuffle. And it's that in-between thing, but they did. You know, they weren't thrash. They were a band with a good singer and songs, and so.
And I will say their most recent album is amazing.
It's great. I've heard it. I have to get it, but I've heard most of it.
So good.
really good. Yeah.
Good for
So
them. Good for them.
Well, that's like a good segue to my next kind of question for you guys. So obviously you've done lots of shows over the years. So whether you were the headliner and you had a really cool opener or vice versa, who's the most amazing band you've ever had the pleasure of not so much sharing the stage, but performing on the same evening with, where you watched them, whether you opened for them or they opened for you, where you were like, wow, that band is absolutely killer?
Wow. The only thing that comes to mind with me was when Presto Ballet opened for Dream Theater in Portland, because I had never seen Dream Theater before. You know, we played in I was shocked at the response we got, because we don't get the gig very often. So we did that show. This was a number of years ago. Then Dream Theater came on, and it was just like, oh my God. I mean, it's just like, speechless. I mean, they were so intense, so good, so spot on. I mean, Mike, of course, and John. And one of the things I really never had an appreciation for John Myung.
Yeah.
You know, how good he was, because I never realized, like, well, on the records, I can never really hear the bass. And then I watch him, it's like, well, because he's playing exactly what Petrucci's playing. And I'm like, you can't do that. You know, it's like, it was just like, wow. And they were such great guys. And we had a history, because I had first heard about Dream Theater when they were called Majesty, when Terry Date, after he finished our first record, he got a gig working with, he produced their Majesty record. So we were just taking off, and Terry had just got, you know, he got some good kudos from working on our record. And so he was working with them, and he goes, you've got to hear these guys. And so he brought like a demo of the album he just finished. And we all, Craig and I particularly, sat around at practice and just listened to this and went, oh.
yeah.
Like, oh no.
The bar has just been raised, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's like, dude, what are we gonna do? You know, kind of like when you were a kid and you heard Eruption on Van Halen 1. It's like, oh man,
Yeah.
what are we gonna do now?
I know, like I said, I had John over to the house, you know, he just came over and let's jam.
Yeah, right.
That was just like, oh my God.
I'll make coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Here
You play, I'll serve dinner, and
Yeah, right.
pretty much. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. We got to play some decent opening shows. Like I said, we played with Stryper twice, and they were both super cool, and they're a great band. Like I said, the Jesus Thing or not, the great band.
Oh, I'm all for that, but yeah.
We got to play with Armored Saint back in the day, and then recently, and you know, a bunch of us have played with Saxon. You know, that was pretty cool. We played with Fate's Warning and Liege Lord a bunch of times. You know, they were friends. We used to go up in Connecticut to their area and play with them. One of our early shows, we opened up for Poison. Like right after their first album came out, we opened for them at our local, and that was hilarious because we got silly string sprayed all over us by the girls in the front. It was really comical.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Too. They were pretty cool. I think that our singer, their wireless mic went down, and they're like, "Can we borrow your wireless mic? We'll give you all the lights and the drum riser." We're like, "Deal." So we got a decent. You know, I never was a Poison fan, but they were nice. So a couple. I didn't play with as many cool bands as you guys toured. Like we never really got to tour. You know.
Yeah,
so.
see, we did the thing, and then there was not a lot of bands like us. It was, you know, us, Anthrax, Metallica, and Slayer. There was just four. Well, we used to be the Big Five, but then something happened. But anyway, but it was there wasn't a lot of it. So we had kind of already like started, you know, doing the touring thing. I've got to say something about Poison, because we never played with them or anything like that, and I don't know them. But there was a tour that happened, I think, in the late '90s, where it was like the '80s, you know, hair metal tour, and it was up in Seattle or at the Gorge over in Eastern Washington, and it was Slaughter, Dokken, Cinderella, and Poison. And a good friend of mine was running sound for Dokken, so he invited me over, so I went over to hang out. And you know, Slaughter, I missed Slaughter, but then Cinderella came on and proceeded to just kick my ass, and I was like, wow, I had no idea. I never saw them in the day, and I heard the single.
Cinderella's really good. Yeah.
Hey, I totally had no idea.
I'm a late convert. Yeah, they're
Exactly. And then well, then Poison came on, and I just kind of, the typical metal guy thinking Poison, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, they're dumb. They were so good. I mean, regardless if you like their songs or not, they were good. So I apologize if anybody in Poison is ever listening to this. I'm sorry for all the things I said that you didn't know I said. You guys were great. And I totally take all of that back. I mean, those songs I used to make fun of, but then as someone who's aspired to write songs, and I love a good pop hook, I find the art in writing a good pop song, whether it's rock or something, as long as it's a band. Those songs ain't nothing but a good time. And those goofy songs I used to laugh at, those are radio friendly. There's an art to that, and they did it really good. And that show, they were spot on. They were great. They were fun. They were tight. Those songs too, they sounded great. So, I mean, I was like, sorry, okay, man, like I said, man, I used to make fun of those bands because you had to if you're metal. But they were
you know
great.
what? They grew up listening to the same stuff we did. Kiss,
They
Cheap
had a
Trick,
different take. They just had a different take on
the popular direction. That's all.
it. They all were getting laid. Yeah.
Right. We were all pissed off. They're all
Yeah,
getting.
we're all like, we hate those bands because all the chicks are at their shows, right? Yeah. But,
So
yeah.
I wanted to ask both of you. Kurdt, I know you guys play there because I'm almost positive I saw you there. But both of your bands played at Sundance in Long Island, right?
Oh my
Oh
God.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time just hanging out at shows at Sundance. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I saw metalchurch at Sundance.
We played there with Anthrax, and I'll never forget. It was in
I
the
was at
summer,
that show. Yep.
and it wasn't like
It's hot as hell in there. Right?
Exactly. It was like
One of my friends passed out at that show. It was so damn hot.
our
Yeah.
drummer kept having to go. Kirk had to keep over to the window because couldn't breathe. And he's doing, and it was just one of those things where you think you're going to pass out anymore. Yeah, I'll never forget that show. That was actually kind of scary because
Yeah.
it's
10
so
pounds of
hot.
bologna, 5-pound bag.
What
That's
is that?
Sundance. 10 pounds of bologna in a 5-pound bag.
Yeah,
That was Sundance every weekend.
I love that. That's awesome.
It was like, the owner, Frank Cariola, just
Yeah.
turned 90 last year. They had a big party for him.
Wow, good for
Friend
him.
played at it. It was like one of the last things that happened before COVID shut down. He's still alive. But yeah, I went to so many shows, and that place, the bathrooms used to overflow.
Oh God, yeah.
Capacity was probably 350, and then you get like 800 in there. You just like sweating, Back
Yeah.
then, fire code be damned. They didn't care,
Yeah. Fire's metal.
That's different now about going to shows, right?
Yeah.
When there's 200 people allowed in that club,
That's all you get.
201. Nope.
Yeah.
Because
Not Sundance.
fine.
Yeah.
Yes, Sundance was
So it's funny, Jim, because I used to back in the 80s, obviously I lived and grew up in upstate New York, but my girlfriend at the time was from Holbrook out in Long Island. So I was in Long Island, like during the summers when we were away from school, we went to college together in SUNY New Paltz. I spent a lot of time out in Long Island every weekend. So in like 86, 87, 88, and 89, we were at Sundance every weekend. And I went to like every show there, and I don't know, we probably were at the same shows.
I'm sure we were.
The crew that I used to go there with, we used to like get there early. We would fight our way up to the front of the stage, and we would literally buy like Coors Light Silver Bullets all night long. We would line the beers up in the front of the stage. We did that every weekend. At the end of the night, there'd be like 1 million beers at the front of the stage. We could barely like see when we walked out of that place. I don't know how we got home half the time, but we saw we saw metalchurch and Yngwie Malmsteen and Anthrax and Warlock played there, right? And even like Autograph and Exodus and Overkill played there. I mean, every band you could possibly imagine played at Sundance.
Everybody played there. Yeah, I mean, did you? I remember when Guns N' Roses first came out, they played there. And I don't know if you were at that, but that was one of those.
No, because I think I was at school then. I don't think that was the summertime. I think that was like during the
7, yeah. But I've seen everybody there. I mean, like I said, we played with Armored Saint there. We were supposed to play with Paul Battlezone.
Battlezone, yeah, Battlezone, yep.
And they just never like we're sitting around, it's like 6 o'clock, and we're like, we got to set up. And like, they hadn't even gotten there yet. So we literally left. We just like, fuck this, we're leaving. You know, we're not going to get a sound check. We're going to sound like this is going to be a nightmare. We just left. And my friend's like, you guys were supposed to play that show with Paul Diano. Like, what happened? I said, they just got there so late. We just didn't want to deal with it. So we bailed, you know, which is really unusual, but that's how, you know, that's what you do when you're young and pissed off.
I know.
Deal with this. But yeah, I saw lots of great, that Faith No More Soundgarden show, Faith No More Voivod Soundgarden was, I saw so many.
I saw Voivod there. I saw King Diamond there. I mean,
Did you see Motorhead there?
I don't think so. No.
You're lucky because that you wouldn't be hearing me right now.
Well, you know, the first band I ever saw, first concert I ever saw was in 1981, and it was Motorhead and Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz with Randy Rhoads. And Motorhead opened up, and that was at the time, I mean, I was like, that was 81, so I was like 15 years old. That was the loudest thing. And I had like 8th row in Poughkeepsie, New York. And that was like the loudest concert to this day, one of the loudest shows I ever saw in my life. And I had never listened to Motorhead before then. And I was like, holy crap. And I was right in front of Lemmy. You know, he's got the microphone coming down like this. And he's like, oh, no, no, no. And I was like, what in the world is that? I mean, as a little kid, I was like, I don't know what just happened here, right? You know?
Right. What am I seeing? What is this?
I saw that show at the Palladium. It was Motorhead and Ozzy. Yeah. And that was with Randy Rhoads.
Yep.
And but the loudest Motorhead show I saw, I actually walked out, was another Perfect Day tour.
Brian Robertson. Oh.
Yeah, it was Motorhead and the Rods, and they played the Calderone, right?
The Rods. I remember the Rods.
They opened up for everybody in New York. So I saw the Rods so many times. But we got backstage from Motorhead, and I remember meeting Lemmy and saying, what am I going to say to Lemmy? So I asked him, I go, how do you get your voice to sound like that? And he's like, lots of Marlboros.
What are you talking about?
Lots of Marlboros, lots of beers. And Brian Robertson was so drunk, and he had this back problem. He had wrenched his back. I saw the roadie take him and go and crack his back so we could play the show. And I had to leave halfway through and go and listen from the lobby because it was so unbelievably loud.
That was Iron Fist, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was Another Perfect Day.
Oh, right.
The album right after that. Yeah, the album right after Iron Fist. Yeah.
And yeah, I saw the Iron Fist tour, Stu with the bomber and the whole thing, you know, that lighting rig. But yeah, I literally, and this is like, I was 20. So like, there was nothing that was too loud for me. You know, I would stick my head in speakers. I literally had to leave. It was so painfully loud. And that's the loudest show I've ever seen.
For me, I remember seeing Ted Nugent in '78. It was like literally the same thing. Just the whole place of the Coliseum just going like this. It's like, all right, you know, and it was awesome.
I saw the Nuge back in the day. Yeah, it was at a big outdoor thing though. But yeah, I saw it.
Man of War in '87. Excruciating.
Yeah, there is a point where it's too loud.
Oh yeah. This is
Yeah.
a good point. So Jim, I got to ask. So that Motorhead show, was Brian Robertson wearing his little short shorts on stage?
Probably. I know that like that was just so weird. Like, yeah,
I heard that one of the reasons why Lemmy was like, we got to get this guy out of there is because he insisted on wearing these little tiny shorts and his
he might have been like on. I don't remember.
Headband, right? I mean, it's not like I mean, I love Brian, but that's like the complete opposite of the way he dressed in Thin Lizzy. And then he comes. I mean, Motorhead, you got to have a certain look, right? I mean, he can play. I love him.
Ace of Spades to I want to get physical. Yeah.
It's like we're not trying to be John Travolta here, right? We're
right.
It was
Olivia Neutron Bomb. Yeah.
I remember even thinking when he joined that it was weird.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I got to hear this.
Love Thin Lizzy.
But the album is great.
It is.
The album is great.
Good album. It's not. I love the Fast Eddie stuff the best.
Of course.
But yeah, it was a good record. But it was an odd pairing, and that's probably why it only lasted one album. You know?
Yeah.
Nice little segue.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
cool.
cool.
So, this has been a wonderful conversation, and kind of in closing,
We should be doing shots.
Yeah, I know, right?
I only got water on me.
Sitting around and like getting drunk and go, I'll tell you what's going on. Yeah.
So what's
These
happening for
kids,
the both
these
of you
kids
next?
today don't know music.
What's next in store for Hitman and Metal Church?
Metal Church is just kind of hanging right now. Waiting to finish up the Live in Japan stuff, and just the whole COVID lockdown stuff is kind of affecting us, like most of us. So we're just kind of, I'm like ready at the starting gate to start doing some things, but some things got to change a little bit. So I'm doing a lot of songwriting right now and doing that kind of thing. So just kind of waiting for the madness to end and then get back to get
Presto Ballet in the near future, hopefully.
Presto Ballet is a lot of stuff I'm writing right now. So I'm getting ready for that new record. So which is
Awesome.
the double concept album follow up.
Oh, awesome. Great.
So Kurdt, where is the other members of Metal Church? Are they in Yucca Valley or are they in Seattle?
Of the current lineup?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're all spread out on the West Coast. Drummers in Vegas, singers in Eureka, California. The other two guys are up in Tacoma and Seattle.
Okay. Yeah. So you have to do it like our entire Hitman album, the last one we just put out, was made, not in the same room. Like
Yeah, well, we'll all be here. We'll make it here, and we'll work it up because we decided that's how we're going to work it up together as a band. So at least get that going. But yeah, so to try to capture that vibe that I was telling you about. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's a luxury because two of my guys are on the East Coast, and two of us three of them on the East Coast. Two of us are out here, so
yeah,
it's hard to even just get to play. We get those couple festival shows that we got, and we'd like go to New York and rehearse for like 3 or 4 rehearsals and just go on stage. And we did.
Oh, I know. It's like, okay, I hope everybody did their homework. It's like,
but they never do. And then just like day 3 of a 4-day rehearsal run before you got to go, and you're like, it's starting to finally sound like it's supposed to, but like the first couple of days are so nerve wracking.
Like you got the whole band starting jumping up on one foot, trying to find one. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, a little tough. So
yeah, exactly.
As for us, I mean, we put the record out in 2020, and we're really super happy with the response it got from most of the writers. Really loved it. So we're kind of just gear is starting to get back. We have basically, our label told us, by the time you're actually going to be able to play any of these festival shows over here in Greece and Germany, like you're going to have another album. So we're going to start writing and recording another album.
Yeah, that's why we're kind of on hold, just so we don't want to put an album out and have to put out another one. So we're just kind of waiting. So I'm doing other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I've lots of other musical projects I do, but as far as Hitman goes, me and Dirk, the singer, just started talking about like, okay, what do we want to do for the next album? Because the last album we did was basically like our second album was a really weird departure, and a lot of our old fans didn't like it. So we're like, okay, we better give them the first album Hitman sound. So we kind of succeeded with that. Everyone said, oh my God. And Pete, even when you reviewed it, you said, wow, sounds like, very similar, 27 years apart, but similar, sound. We want to try and, do a little bit different things again, but as far as, we have to start writing another album. So that's what we're up to. So
cool. Well,
no gigs.
Yeah, no gigs, not yet.
Soon.
We'll see what happens. Yeah, later this year maybe, but I think most people should set their expectations for 2022 at this point, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I hope it's different. So,
right.
Well, we look forward to new stuff from both of you guys, and I don't know about everybody watching, but I want to get these two guys back on the show again. So this was a dynamite conversation, and we got to get Phil to come on, right? So that totally happen again, right?
Yeah, and I'll talk to you about that other thing too. I'm going to try and get that other thing in motion. I'll send him an email later.
Sounds good.
I think it'd be great on the show. So
cool.
Sounds
always
good.
love being a part of it. Wonderful. Love what you do, man.
I love those Metal Church records, man. The Dark, man, I love that album.
Thank you very much. Hey, well, we got each other's email. Let's stay in contact.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And you're in Yucca Valley, so you're close, relative.
There you go. Well,
Wow.
thanks everybody for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. I want to thank Jim Bacchi from Hittman and Kurdt Vanderhoof from Metal Church. You will be seeing them again here. We'll make this happen again. Maybe we'll bring some additional folks on and we'll just do a all metal discussion, right? Because this is where it's at. So
Right.
for Jim and for Kurdt, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Pete. Take care, man.
Thanks, Pete. See you, bud.